Your life begins to transform the moment you choose to think differently. And this, right here, could be that moment. This is Mindshift with Geetanjali, the space where you shift your mindset, rise above limitations, and reframe your reality. I'm Geetanjali, mindset coach, author, and your companion on this journey to rediscover the power that's already within you. Let's begin. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and thank you for continuing to walk this journey with me. May I ask you to tap on the subscribe button to follow me, and this way a new podcast will show up on your feed every Friday for you to listen to. It's free to subscribe. Let's see what the season is about. This season, exploring the hidden emotional and subconscious patterns that quietly shape the way we think, react, feel, and relate to ourselves. And today's conversation is one so many people struggle with silently: self criticism. That constant inner voice that says, "You should be doing more. You are not good enough. You always mess things up. You should have handled that better. Why can't you just get it together?" And what is heartbreaking is that many people hear this voice so often they begin believing it's normal. They begin believing harshness is motivation, criticism is discipline, and self attack is the only way to improve themselves. But what if that voice is not helping you grow? What if it is actually keeping your nervous system stuck in stress, shame, and emotional exhaustion? And what if healing begins when you finally learn how to become your own safest place instead of your own harshest critic? If that resonates with you, this episode is for you. Here are the 4 P's that we look at: problem, promise, proof, and plan. Problem. Many people speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they love. One mistake, and the mind attacks. One setback, and self worth collapses. One imperfect moment, and the inner critic becomes relentless. And over time, self criticism becomes automatic. So automatic that people no longer even notice it's happening. They criticize their body, their emotions, their progress, their healing, their productivity, their appearance, their decisions. And many people secretly believe, if I stop criticizing myself, I will become lazy. If I'm not hard on myself, I will stop growing. But often the opposite is true. Constant self criticism does not create sustainable growth. It creates emotional exhaustion, shame, anxiety, and nervous system dysregulation. And eventually, many people stop feeling emotionally safe even within their own minds. Promise. But once you understand where self criticism comes from and what it is actually doing to the brain and nervous system, everything begins changing. You stop seeing kindness toward yourself as weakness. You begin understanding that self compassion creates far more emotional resilience than self attack ever could. And slowly, you begin building a healthier relationship with yourself internally. One based not on shame, but on support. Not on punishment, but on awareness. Because healing is not learning how to become perfect. Healing is learning how to stay connected to yourself even when you are imperfect. Proof. Psychology and neuroscience now show us that chronic self-criticism activates many of the same stress responses in the brain as external criticism or emotional threat. The nervous system does not fully distinguish between danger coming from the outside world and repeated emotional attack coming from within. So when someone constantly criticizes themselves internally, the brain can remain stuck in heightened stress states. And over time, this affects emotional regulation, self-worth, anxiety levels, and even physical health. Many people also develop self-criticism early in life. Sometimes criticism becomes connected to achievement. Sometimes perfectionism has become connected to safety. Sometimes being hard on yourself becomes a survival strategy to avoid rejection, failure, or judgment. And eventually, the inner critic becomes internalized, not because people hate themselves, but because part of the nervous system learned, if I criticize myself first, maybe I can protect myself from pain later. But protection through shame comes at a cost, and healing often begins when we stop treating ourselves like enemies. Plan. So, what do we do if self criticism has become automatic? First, we begin noticing how we speak to ourselves internally, because awareness always comes before change. Second, we stop confusing harshness with growth. Being cruel to yourself is not emotional strength. And third, we begin learning how to relate to ourselves the way we would relate to someone we deeply love, with patience, compassion, encouragement, grace. Because your mind and nervous system function very differently when they feel emotionally safe instead of emotionally attacked. And maybe one of the most powerful questions we can ask ourselves is this: would I speak to someone I love the way I speak to myself? And this connects deeply to last week's episode. Why does change feel so uncomfortable? Because many people try to force themselves through growth using shame and self-criticism. But lasting transformation does not happen through emotional punishment. It happens through nervous system safety, self-awareness, and compassion. The science section is where we look a bit deeper at things. Let's go and look into what is actually happening in the brain during chronic self-criticism. When we repeatedly attack ourselves internally, the brain often activates stress-related survival responses. The amygdala, the brain's detection system, becomes more active. Stress hormones like cortisol increase, and over time, the nervous system can remain stuck in chronic emotional tension. This is why self-criticism often leads to anxiety, emotional burnout, perfectionism, overthinking, and even avoidance. Because the brain begins operating from fear instead of safety. At the same time, the brain also builds neural pathways around repeated thoughts. This means the more often someone rehearses self-critical thinking, the stronger and more automatic those pathways become. Eventually, the inner critic starts sounding like truth. Not because it is true, but because it has been repeated so many times. And this is incredibly important. The brain believes what it hears repeatedly, including the words you say to yourself. But neuroplasticity also means these patterns can change. Every time you interrupt self-criticism with awareness, every time you practice self-compassion, every time you speak to yourself with kindness instead of shame, you begin creating new neural pathways. And slowly, the nervous system begins learning something many people have never fully experienced internally: emotional safety within themselves. There is a story about my client with the fictitious name Lauren. Lauren was highly successful, responsible, driven, hardworking. People admired how disciplined she was, but internally her mind never rested. Every mistake became proof she was failing. Every accomplishment immediately became, "What is next? You could have done better. Why are you still not further ahead?" And no matter how much she achieved, it never felt enough. One evening, after a long, exhausting day, Lauren caught herself criticizing herself for being tired. And suddenly she realized something heartbreaking. She could not remember the last time she had spoken to herself with kindness. Her inner voice sounded more like a bully than a friend. Growing up, praise often came through achievement. Mistakes brought criticism. Perfection brought approval. So her nervous system learned self-pressure equals safety. And over time, the inner critic became internalized. Not because she wanted to hurt herself, but because part of her believed constant criticism would keep her from failing. This happens to so many people. Sometimes the voice that hurts us the most is the one we have normalized inside our own mind. Imagine someone named David. David struggled deeply with self-worth after a difficult breakup. And no matter what happened, his mind always turned against him. If someone canceled plans, he blamed himself. If something went wrong at work, he called himself stupid. If he made a small mistake, he replayed it for days. And eventually, he became emotionally exhausted from living inside his own mind. Then one day, his therapist asked him a simple question. If your best friend made the same mistake, what would you say to them? And immediately David's voice softened. He would encourage them, comfort them, remind them they were human. And in that moment, he realized something powerful. He had been offering compassion to everyone except himself. And many people live this way without realizing it. They become their own harshest critic, when what they truly need is to become their own safest friend. So today I want to give you a practice called the Best Friend Reframe. Because healing self criticism begins when we stop talking to ourselves like enemies. The next time you notice harsh inner dialogue, walk through these 5 steps. Step 1: notice the inner voice. Pause and ask yourself, what am I saying to myself right now? Become aware of the tone. Is it harsh, punishing, shaming, perfectionistic? Step 2: interrupt the automatic pattern. Take a slow breath and remind yourself this is a learned pattern, not my identity. Awareness weakens automatic neural pathways. Step 3. Imagine someone you love. Imagine your best friend, your child, someone you deeply cared about. If they were struggling the way you are right now, what would you say to them? Step 4. Offer yourself the same compassion. Now redirect those same words toward yourself, not fake positivity, real compassion. Maybe you are doing your best. You are human. One mistake does not define you. You deserve kindness too. Step 5. Practice daily self-support. Every day, intentionally speak to yourself with more patience and gentleness. Because the nervous system heals differently when it feels emotionally supported instead of emotionally attacked. And over time, self compassion becomes a new internal pattern. And remember, being kind to yourself does not make you weak, it makes healing sustainable. Because growth rooted in compassion creates very different emotional outcomes than growth rooted in shame. I want to guide you through a short meditation designed to help quiet the inner critic and reconnect with a more compassionate relationship with yourself. Meditation helps calm mental overstimulation. It regulates the nervous system and creates space between you and automatic thought patterns. And sometimes healing begins simply by learning how to sit with yourself gently instead of constantly attacking yourself internally. So, this meditation is designed to help your mind and body experience what emotional safety within yourself can feel like. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently exhale. Again, slowly breathe in and softly let the breath go. Allow your shoulders to relax. Relax your jaw. Relax the muscles around your eyes. And for the next few moments, allow yourself to stop trying to fix yourself. You do not need to earn rest here. You do not need to prove your worth here. Simply breathe. Now gently bring your attention to your heart and notice the tone of your inner world lately. Notice how you have been speaking to yourself without judgment, without shame, just awareness. And now quietly imagine placing compassion around the parts of you that have been struggling. Tired parts, the insecure parts, the healing parts, the imperfect parts. Not pushing them away, not criticizing them, simply allowing them to exist with kindness. And quietly repeat within yourself, I do not need to attack myself to grow. I am allowed to be human. I am allowed to make mistakes. I deserve the same compassion I give to others. I can become my own safe place. Take another slow, deep breath in. And as you exhale, imagine harshness slowly leaving the body. The pressure, the shame, the perfectionism, softening, releasing. Now place one hand gently over your heart if that feels comfortable for you, and simply sit with this truth. You have survived so much already. You do not need to keep fighting yourself internally to deserve love, healing, or growth. And quietly repeat, I choose compassion over criticism. I am learning to speak to myself with kindness. I am worthy even when I am imperfect. I am becoming my own best friend. Take one final slow deep breath in and gently exhale. And allow your nervous system to remember healing grows much more easily in kindness than in shame. So this week, pay attention to the way you speak to yourself internally, because your inner voice becomes the emotional environment your nervous system lives inside every day. And maybe healing is not about becoming someone completely different. Maybe healing begins the moment you finally stop bullying yourself and start becoming your own best friend instead. And next week, join me for the episode, What If Your Anxiety is Trying to Tell You Something? Because we are going to explore how anxiety is not always something to fight or suppress. Sometimes it is a nervous system trying to communicate unmet needs, unresolved stress, emotional overwhelm, or internal imbalance. We will talk about why the brain stays stuck in survival mode, how chronic stress rewires emotional patterns, and how to begin responding to anxiety with awareness, regulation, and compassion instead of fear. Thank you for joining me today on Mindshift with Geetanjali. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear this message and subscribe for next week's episode. Every moment of awareness you create today builds the reality you live tomorrow. Keep rising, keep shifting, keep reframing, and keep becoming who you're meant to be. Rise, shift, reframe, become.